Unit 9 is going to focus on marine environmental ecology. And the first section, 9.1, is focusing on the natural resources that we take from the ocean. To begin with, let's talk about what are known as non-renewable resources. And these would be the resources that do not reform or replenish naturally, or do not reform within a human lifespan. So they do not renew themselves. Probably the one that comes to mind for most of us as far as a non-renewable resource is petroleum or crude oil. And this, of course, is the chemical extracted from the earth that eventually becomes gasoline and motor oil and diesel and many other products. The reason that this is such a vital resource for us is the fact that it's basically has hydrocarbons in it. Hydrocarbons are the source of the energy, and they're what burn or combust in our engines to make our cars and other motor vehicles move. They are considered to be fossil fuels because petroleum forms from the remains of marine organisms, most notably plankton and other soft-bodied organisms that settle on the bottom and become part of the sediment. Eventually, their organism decomposes to the point where it becomes hydrocarbons and it forms petroleum. And you can see this if we look here in this diagram over here, the petroleum layers form in the different sediment layers underneath the ocean. If we were to look in really carefully, you can kind of see how oil forms within these sand grains and can be extracted if we drill through the sediment. And in the ocean, we do this with oil rigs. And you can see these giant platforms here that have wells that they drill into the bedrock to eventually reach the oil reserves. And of course, that is brought to the surface and put into an oil tanker and delivered to a refinery where it's turned into perhaps diesel or gasoline or whatever is needed. Now, another less popular form of a non-renewable resource in the ocean is what we call methane hydrates. And these are ice crystals that form on continental slopes. In this map you can see here, this shows where the density of these methane hydrates are. We even have some, although it's kind of cut off by this picture. They form even off the east coast of the United States. So they're very plentiful. There's lots of them out there. And what makes them so useful is that when they burn, or they have natural gas, and you can see that in this burning picture here. So methane is natural gas. So there's enough methane hydrate, enough natural gas in these methane hydrates to supply the world's energy needs for centuries. So you may be wondering, well, why are we not harvesting these in addition to oil? Well, they're currently not used as a fuel source because they're very expensive to recover. So they're in the deep ocean. It's hard to get to them. So we have yet to find a way to actually extract them and collect them from the ocean floor in a way that's cost effective. And also they're very dangerous to handle. So imagine trying to harvest these things in a rough ocean. They can be very explosive. So again, we have yet to discover a way to harvest them in a way that's safe. But perhaps in the future the technology will exist that we can do this. So this is an option for a new energy source if we do deplete petroleum to the levels that are predicted. Now let's talk a little bit about renewable resources. These are the resources that are replaced naturally in the ocean. And one that we want to talk about first is energy. Power, electricity can actually be harvested from the ocean on a renewable basis. So the ocean can be used as a source of renewable energy for humans, and this is most notably done via waves. Waves and tides can be used to create hydroelectric power, just as water running through a dam can be used to create electricity. Waves can also, the energy that's in the waves and the tides can also be transformed into electrical energy. It's kind of like the whole concept of taking wind energy and transferring that into electrical power using a windmill. Well, there's several different methods of taking waves and using them to create mechanical energy, which then can be transformed into electrical energy. And that's what this diagram is showing. a system of buoys that are attached to contraptions on the bottom that will basically create electrical energy that could be stored or transferred to a coastal city. So far we have not really looked into this on a large scale basis, but I do believe that in the future we're going to see more of these types of things to power coastal cities, because gas is becoming expensive, and we just need to move on to alternative energy sources that are safe. And this is definitely a safe way to generate plenty of electricity for our needs. So the ocean also stores a lot of heat from the sun, and that can be also used as an energy source, a thermal energy source. It's possible we could be heating homes even with this energy. So there's a lot of energy stored in the ocean that we can have yet to tap into to use to benefit our technological needs today. Another renewable resource that we may not think of in the ocean is fresh water. Now, we can't drink seawater, that would eventually kill you, but if you were to take the salt out, you would have plenty of fresh water. Now, here in the United States, we don't really have a problem as of yet with freshwater sources, but the supply is not keeping pace with the human population, and we're starting to see in areas like in Saudi Arabia, where freshwater is a big ordeal for them. It's very limited. In fact, freshwater over there is as expensive as gasoline is over here for us. So we're seeing in countries such as in these Arab nations starting to use what's called desalination, which is the removal of salt from seawater, and that's what these gentlemen here are walking down this boardwalk alongside these long desalination plants to get fresh water for their citizens. Another non-renewable resource, and this is one that we may not think is actually a resource, but when we look at the money that is attached to ecotourism, this would be people taking vacations and going on excursions to learn about nature and just taking in the sights. It's a billion-dollar industry, and it's one that is renewable if it's done the right way. We call these things non-extractive resources. This is where we obtain from the sea without actually removing anything. The number one non-extractive resource is using the ocean as a means of transport. So shipping and taking cruises and so forth, we basically just use it as a waterway, a way to move around. But as I mentioned a little bit ago, ecotourism, which is basically tourism that focuses on visiting and experiencing wildlife and natural environments. This is another way that another resource that we take from the ocean. Now, as it says here, ecotourism does affect environments, but in two different ways. Positively, by promoting the conservation of natural habitats. People go and they see how beautiful coral reefs are, and it motivates them to want to protect these delicate essential habitats that they're visiting. But it also can negatively harm environments by promoting the rapid development. People want to live near these coral reefs. They may want to live near the beach. And also another thing that we may not think about is we're conditioning animals to view humans as a food source. I always kind of point to the fact that one popular thing that we see, like in the Bahamas and other locations, are shark dives. Fantastic experience to be able to get in the water and watch these sharks eat in front of you in a relatively safe environment. I mean, there are risks, some risks involved, but usually it's not that big of a problem. But the thing is that we're conditioning sharks to look at humans, maybe not as eating humans as a food source, but now all of a sudden, for the first time, sharks associate getting fed with humans. And there's actually statistics that show that, since we have been doing a greater number of shark dives in different areas, there's been a greater number of shark attacks in these areas. And this could just be a result of us conditioning sharks to look at humans as a way to get a meal. So it may be a simple association as that could be leading to these attacks. But again, this wraps up the notes on natural resources. We'll talk more about whaling and the fishing industry in the next section. But this is just a nice little introduction as far as natural resources coming from the ocean.